0853 0915 570 8347. And you can also join us live on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel on High Voltage News. Like, comment, and share the video for others to be part of the conversation. And please ensure that when you do call in, your comments should be very clean and very civil. And you can also follow us on Facebook on Volt 104.3 FM. All right, so this morning, let's take a look at the top stories on today's papers. And starting with the Punch newspaper, it's about the Independent National Electoral Commission. Yes, the 2027 general election has been shifted from the initial date that they proposed. Now, INEC has fixed January 16 for 2027 presidential poll. All right, that is on the page 7 of the Punch newspaper. INEC fixes January 16 for 2027 presidential poll. Okay, so they've revised the timetable for the 2027 general elections. Originally, under the Electoral Act 2022, the presidential and National Assembly elections were scheduled for February 20, 2027, while governorship and state assembly elections were to follow in March. But following the repeal of the 2022 law and the introduction of the Electoral Act 2026, INEC has now moved the dates forward. Now, under the new timetable, the presidential and National Assembly elections will hold on January 16th, while the governorship and state houses of assembly elections will take place on February 6th, 2027. Now, that means that Nigerians will vote about a month earlier than previously planned. According to INEC, the adjustment is necessary to comply with the new timelines introduced in the Electoral Act 2026. The timetable is that they posted on their X. The party primaries will run from April 23rd to May 30th, 2026, while the campaigns for presidential and National Assembly elections will begin in August 2026, and the governorship campaigns will start in September 2026. So these campaigns as well will end 24 hours before the election day. And INEC says it will strictly enforce compliance. So when we look at all this shift, what does it really mean? So we look at it, firstly, this confirms that the Electoral Act 2026 is already shaping the politics in Nigeria. So whether a lot of persons says that it is controversial, whether it's controversial or not, the law is now operational and institutions are aligning with it. And the earlier election date changes the political calculations with the opposition party and also the ruling party. Because when we look at for ruling party, it could be strategic for them, because a general election shortens the political tension period in 2027, and it also reduces the time for last-minute alliance or any form of coalitions. Meanwhile, for the opposition, it means that there's less room for internal disputes. So primaries must be concluded by May 2026. And this is not far. It's very soon we get to May. So any party still struggling with unity now has to move quickly. We have PDP, they need to settle any differences they have and do their primary and bring out the presidential candidate, and for other parties as well. And when we also look at this funding and logistics, INEC says that the timetable aligns with the Constitution and the new law. But elections in Nigeria are massive operations with the amount of money that they're already calling to fund the election, also involving the security agencies, the political parties, the observers, the millions of voters. Will moving the election forward improve the efficiency? Because they moved it forward because of the Ramadan, and so it doesn't affect the Muslim Ramadan. And also from what they said, according to the Electoral Act 2026. So now, moving it forward, is it going to improve the efficiency? Is it going to compress the preparation time and create new challenges? Another important question is voter readiness. January is typically a post-holiday period. People are just coming, Nigerians are just coming out of Christmas and New Year, the celebrations. School are resuming. Businesses are just adjusting. So will there be, with the voter turnout, will it be affected? Will people turn out to vote, or with the whole Christmas season or New Year's season, is it going to affect the polls? So these are the questions to consider. And when you also talk about the security, we look at Nigeria, it has ongoing concerns in several regions. Will security agencies be fully prepared earlier than expected? And with the president agitating for state police, calling on the National Assembly to ensure that they amend the constitution to involve the creation of state police, is it going to be speedy? Is it something they can achieve before the 2027 elections for security purpose, so that people who will be coming out to vote won't be afraid of their lives? So these are the considerations, because we also need to look at some of these contexts. And for the current tension over the Electoral Act 2026, while the opposition parties are calling for amendments, INEC is moving ahead with the implementation. So that's really sent a very strong message. The 2027 race has officially, to an extent, begun. So a lot of persons are going to start preparing for the primaries, for the campaigns. And before you know it, there'll be a lot of banners, posters everywhere. But then beyond the party strategies, the bigger issue remains credibility. Is it going to be credible? When we look at what INEC says that the revised dates are consistent with the Constitution and the Electoral Acts. It is calling on stakeholders to also cooperate peacefully. Credible elections that reflect the will of the people. So with all these oppositions, with all these fights about the Electoral Act, are we going to see a credible election in 2027? All right, so the question people are asking, will their vote count, will results reflect what happens at polling units? Will the process be transparent? So do you think that moving the elections earlier is a smart administrative decision, or is it a political calculation? And also, does this give parties enough time to prepare credible candidates? And most importantly, do you have confidence in INEC to deliver credible elections under the new timetable? All right, the phone lines will be opened shortly to hear your take on the timetable adjustment and also the primaries and all that has to do with the 2027 election. So we'll let you know when we open the phone line. But remember that the phone lines to call in is 0706 048 5853, or you can also call 0915 570 8347. All right, moving on, still on the Punch newspaper, we see the leaders of the opposition leaders that are against the Electoral Act. Is still about the 2027 election. So we see the main headline, the major headline here on the Punch says, Electoral Act, Senate rejects fresh amendments as Atiku, Obi, Amechi push back. This is on the page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Senate rejects fresh amendments as Atiku, Obi, Amechi push back. And opposition accuses APC of plotting against e-transmission of 2027 poll results, and they are demanding Electoral Act review. Meanwhile, presidency have kicked against it. You can read this up on the page 2 of the Punch newspaper. But let's take a look at what it's talking about. So the leaders of the opposition, including figures from the African Democratic Congress and the New Nigerian People's Party, that's NNPP, they have mounted fresh pressure on the National Assembly to urgently amend the new Electoral Acts. They describe it as anti-democratic and is skewed in favor of the ruling All Progressives Congress. But the Senate has pushed back strongly, and they are telling the opposition to channel their concerns through the lawmakers rather than what it calls public agitation. So what exactly is this issue? First, we see that the new Electoral Act 2026, it made some key changes. Under the previous law, parties could choose their candidates through the direct primaries, indirect primaries using delegates or consensus. But the new law removes indirect primaries. So parties are now limited to direct primaries or the consensus. So now the act also shortens the campaign timelines and reduces the period before elections when funds are released to the electoral body. The independent national, that's the independent, from 12 months to 6 months. So when you look at the more of it, the opposition is raising alarm over provision in Section 60, which they say gives wide discretion to the presiding officers in transmitting election results electronically. So the argument is that this could weaken the credibility of electronic transmission and also create room for manipulation. Now, when I was reading the previous headline, I asked a question: Do you trust the credibility of the 2027 election? So the opposition are against this Electoral Act 2026, and they are pushing for amendment. But INEC is already aligning with the amended Electoral Act 2026, and they already fixed timetable for the election, and they are moving with it. And most of the institutions are also aligning with this Electoral Act. But opposition, a lot of them are not okay with it. We have the leaders quoting the former INEC officials who had previously said that technology like BVAS work largely offline and that Nigeria has wide network coverage. So they cited data from the Nigerian Communications Commission to argue that network failure should not be used as an excuse to delay any results transmission. But then beyond these technical arguments, the tone from the opposition leaders has been strong. The former Vice President, Atiku Abubakar, warned that a weakened democracy in Nigeria could affect the entire African continent. Peter Obi went further to criticize the current government over the poverty, the insecurity, the borrowing, and called for a united opposition. We have the former minister, Rotimi Amechi, who made a strategic point, and he said that the real problem of the opposition is not President Bola Tinubu, but the opposition's own strategy and internal weaknesses. We've been talking about this on the show. We've talked about how the opposition should be able to unite themselves and form a strong coalition if they are really going to be a strong force against the ruling party. But from what we are seeing, there's a lot of division in these opposition parties, and a lot of persons are wondering, is this how they are going to fight in 2027? So from what Rotimi Amechi said, it's not about the ruling party, it's about the strategy of the opposition party and also their internal weaknesses that most of them have refused to address. So this is one of the issue that the opposition party have. So on the other side, the Senate insists that due process was followed. The lawmakers argue that once a bill has been passed and signed into law, it cannot be undone by press conferences. So they say that any amendment must follow formal legislative procedures. So let's look at this. What we are seeing is not just a legal debate. It is an early battle for 2027. The opposition is trying to frame the Electoral Act as the defining issue ahead of the next election. By raising concerns early, they are positioning themselves as, yes, defenders of democracy and transparency. The ruling side, however, is projecting confidence. Their message is, if you're not satisfied, contest and win in 2027. That is what the ruling party is saying. Come and contest, come to the polling unit and let Nigerians decide for 2027. But there are deeper questions that has to be asked. It is restricting the parties to only direct primaries and consensus truly anti-democratic? Or is it an attempt to standardize internal party process? The shortening of the INEC funding timelines, does it affect the parties in preparation for the 2027 election, or is 6 months still sufficient for them? Is it still sufficient? And most importantly, should there be any room at all for discretion in the electronic transmission of results, or should the law be mandatory? So the phone lines are open to hear what you think concerning this, the shifting of the fixing of the result, the timetable, yes, the timetable to January 16 for the presidential poll, the National Assembly, and February 6th for the governorship election. What do you have to say about it? And also the Senate rejecting further amendment of the Electoral Act amid the opposition calling for amendments. So 0706 048 5853 or 0915 570 8347. The phone lines are open. You can call in and make your contribution. Remember that you are listening to High Voltage on Volt 104.3 FM, and we are live on YouTube. Do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel on High Voltage News. Like, comment, share the videos for others to be part of the conversation. All right, so moving on, still on the Punch newspaper. Let's take a look at another headline here that says FCCPC probes fare fixing by local airlines. On the page 20 of the Punch newspaper, FCCPC probes fixing by local airlines. Hello, good morning.
Hello there, good morning.
You're welcome. Your name and your location.
We are speaking with Solomon from Enugu.
All right, please go ahead.
When area says that there is nothing like election in 2027 or whatever, they have timetabled everything with their arrangement. You are fixing election in Nigeria in January after Christmas. January 6th or 16th. Is it not?
16.
That's 16th January. And school is starting within that. They are not even considering our education calendar. How is it going to happen? Election in January after Christmas. That means people are not going to travel for their Christmas celebration again. That is what they want to do. And this thing has been arranged in their own form. Well, that is one thing with Nigeria. They know how to maneuver whatever to suit them. And I do not believe that they are going to do election because they have tabled everything in their own form, being Tinubu and co. And we are waiting for 2027, whatever that comes. God, you are in control. Thank you, my dear.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, 0706 048 5853, 0915 570 8347. What are your thoughts? What are your opinion? What do you have to say concerning the headlines? All right, so still on the punch, we saw the headline that says FCPC probes fare fixing by local airlines. So the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission says that it has uncovered patterns of possible price manipulation by some of these domestic airlines. That was during the December 2025 festive season. And according to the report released by the Commission, the ticket fares during the holiday peak were significantly very high. It was higher than the normal prices that were recorded in this 2026, January 2026. So there was an increment in December because of the festive seasons. So they are probing the fare, the reason for the increment. Hello, good morning. Good morning. Your name and your location. All right, sorry. Mm.
I'm happy that I'm from Igbo extraction and there's one adage we use to narrate paraphrase election. That they go to Adwa Muta when the hunter kills an animal in the forest or with his hunt to then gone and brings it back to home. There's no point in the member of his family asking whether he killed the animal and go and that road because people will be wise enough and that is fine. So all these antics our politicians are playing. They are bringing up just to sideline us. So do us more place all our rules on the condition of and on the state of it when we take more. We are taking more. Maybe we are taking more of all this their antics and then we become foolish people on the earth. So that and in the other review people we look more and we saw not the goodness, we saw nothing because we were told the face change and that change is to me it's not an attitude. I don't know where it's for. So change, not the change. They just change the road on people and then people were just manic and then praise them and then that was the end of everything. So what am I saying? So that the opposition are clamoring for the reversion of that electoral law that is written. They will now have it as an evidence that there's no more time for them to do it. That is no secret there. So let them play their listing, play all their antics. Personally, I am convinced, I believe I'm convinced that God is going to me. That is why man Adam Matiwaka. Man can. But he, God,
all right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, you can join the conversation on 0706 048 5853. And if you cannot connect with that line, you can also call on 0915 570 8347. And you can drop your comments on our YouTube channel as well, on High Voltage News. We are live. And also you can drop an SMS or WhatsApp message, depending on what is more convenient for you. All right, so moving to the Guardian newspaper, we see again INEC ignores Electoral Act protests, shifts 2027 elections from Ramadan on the page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. And there's a story here that says Commission documents 700,000 out of school children. Page 7 of the Guardian says Commission documents 700,000 out of school children. And this is the National Commission for Almajiri and Out of School Children Education. They say that it has documented 700,000 out of school children across the country. That figure was revealed at the Benue Basic Education Summit in Makurdi. It's a gathering organized by the Benue State Universal Basic Education Board in collaboration with the Universal Basic Education Commission and other partners. 700,000. Because behind this number are children, real children, and these people are not in classroom. They are not learning. They are not building the skills needed for the future. They are not. In response to this, the Benue State Governor launched what he calls the Brace Up Project and inaugurated student marshals across the local councils to be able to help to identify and monitor out of school children in their communities. He also reaffirmed free and compulsory basic education in the states. Meanwhile, in Oyo State, Governor Seyi Makinde says that about 65,000 out of school children have returned to classroom. So he credits interventions under the Better Education Service Delivery Program that's supported by the Universal Basic Education Commission and the World Bank. So on what we are seeing is, on one hand, is a national crisis. It is. On the other hand, state level efforts showing that, okay, there is a measurable progress. Although we've heard from some of these states, some of these states have adopted the free education, and some states like Anambra State who said that there is free education for the children to be able to attend schools and all that. And we also saw what the Benue State Governor is doing, and what the Oyo State Governor said, that 65,000 of these out of school children are back to school because of the interventions from UBEC, the World Bank. So, but there's a very deep issue. If 700,000 children are currently documented as out of school, then what is the real national figure? Because when we look at the past estimate, it has suggested the number runs into millions of children out of the school. And beyond counting them, how exactly do we keep them in school? What are the state governments expected to do? What are the federal government expected to do? And also the local government that are the nearest to the people. What are they supposed to do? Build schools, ensure that there's adequate facility in the schools, give out free textbooks, everything that a child needs to be able to attend a school. That is what the government should be focusing on, providing free education. Yes, we talk about security as well. So there are basic things, there are important things that governments should focus on. The security, the education of the children. Because when we say that the children are the leaders, they can't just become leaders overnight. They have to be trained. And these are the processes. So when they're out of school, it really shows the failure. When we see millions of children out of school, it reflects the administration, it reflects what the government is doing. So they really need to do something about it. So how exactly do we keep them in school? We look at the poverty rates, we look at the insecurity, we look at the child labor. What about early marriage and the weak infrastructure? It remains a major barrier in the country. So free education is very important. It is important, but it has to be enough when the families, they need to be able to afford the uniforms, the books, the transport, even daily means. So the economy of the country needs to be stable. It needs to be very good so that everyone can be able to afford these basic things. These basic things. And another thing is, as states, I've already talked about it, but I really need to ask this question. Are states doing enough to track children who drop out quietly? Just like the Benue State governor said he has set up a committee that would be tracking the children that are out of school, monitor them. So what about other states? Are they doing enough? We see a lot of children hawking, doing all sort of things just to be able to earn a particular amount of money. You see children feeding their family. I've heard stories of a child, I had story of a child that was selling some things to be able to take care of the mother, because the father is late and the mother is sick. And you see a 12-year-old child trying to survive in Nigeria and also feeding a grown-up. This is not how it's supposed to be. So the government needs to ensure that there's adequate provision for all these basic needs, what the people need to be able to survive. Food cost has to come down. Transportation has to come down. Everything that we need, citizens of Nigeria need to be able to survive in the country, they need to find a way to ensure that it is affordable. They really need to. So the idea of the student marshal in Benue is interesting, very interesting, but is it going to be sustainable? So they need to find a system around it, build a system, and ensure that even when the governor leaves the office, that it is still running. It doesn't die with the governor, end with the administration. So they need to find a way to support it, and also the funding as well. So that is it on the out of school children. They need to find a way to do something about it. All right, you can read that story up on the page 7 of the Guardian newspaper. And you can also join the conversation on 0706 048 5853 or 0915 570 8347. All right, still on the Guardian newspaper, we see federal government insists on state police awaits legislative backing. On the page 3 of the Guardian newspaper, federal government insists on state police and they await legislative backing. I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday that the president had breakfasts, as a fast was breaking the fast with the senators, and he was asking them to amend the constitution to involve the state police in the forming of the state police, that every state, yes, needs to have, for security purposes, every state needs to have their own police for swift response to emergency and other crime related activities that is going on in the states. So the president is really pushing for the state police, and this is what the governors tried to push last year. He also had a meeting with the governors, whether earlier this week or sometime last week, where he also talked about the state police. So the president is really pushing for this, and to an extent, it's commendable. Yes, it's a very good one, because we really need because with the way people report that they call on the police and they hardly come to the crime scene, or they come hours after the crime has been committed. Nigerians need state policing. Although critics are like, it might be political, they might abuse it. The funding, how are you going to get the funding to fund this state police and all that? But let them start first, and with time we are going to see how it's going to work out. All right, so still on the Guardian, we see Senate fought on the page 3. Senate fought Zero Capital demands accountability as ministers defend fiscal reforms. Senate fought Zero Capital demands accountability as ministers defend fiscal reforms. Okay, terrorist attacks on Nigeria. Benin and Niger borders rose by 262% in 2025. That is also on the page 3 of The Guardian. And it says, terrorist attacks on Nigeria, Benin Republic, Niger borders rose by 262% in 2025. All right, we take more headlines on The Guardian. On the page 6 of The Guardian says, Constitution Amendment delay fuels anxiety ahead of 2027 election. Okay. Bauchi governor says 10,000 were armed bandits attacking communities. That is on the page 29 of The Guardian newspaper. All right, let's take more from the other papers. Okay, Daily Trust says opposition rejects amended electoral act. We've already seen this in some of the newspaper headlines that we read from the Punch, The Guardian. Opposition rejects amended electoral act. And we have bag of cement climbs to 11,000 naira. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. You're welcome. Your name and your location. All right, please go ahead. We mm. Mm. Yes. Mm. Yes. Mm. Mm. Wow. Mm. 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 Yes. Yes. Mm. Okay. Mm. Yes.
are done at, I'm telling you, I can give my chance and say within a week, because the National Assembly is not only in his pocket, it's in its kitchen. So they can change that aspect of the law and allow the police, allow the state to have the police. Forget about whether they will abuse it. It doesn't matter. If they abuse it, the person will eventually live off it. And when you leave something, face it. You understand?
Yes.
So even as we are now, are they not abusing it? They are abusing it. Are they not using state institutions to block for low position and sending voices? They are doing it. So what the issue here is that we will not, because of that, throw a good child that water. That water. We will not. It's good because if we have state police, they will have that ammunition. These criminals are having. These are our local vigilante and what you call them, neighborhood watch. The law does not permit them to have AK-47 and those sophisticated weapons, which these criminals are using. 5 AK-47 can ransack the entire community. But if our police can have it, that will be a starting point. And before you know it, it will get a road. They will now know that there will be a rapid response. It will no longer be this Nigerian police system style. Because it's Enugu State, for instance, the kind of money the governor is pumping in security. If he recruits our people to protect us, we know who these bandits are. We know where they are coming from. They don't need to be told where they are coming from or whom they are. I can assure you that there's no community that have been recruited for police that will police their area, that will not make sure that such things as it happens in other part of the country cannot happen here.
Yes.
It's a very clear approach to this menace. Otherwise, these people will finish us one day. And the rates they give people, they deal with reckless abandon. They have not been arrested, have not been prosecuted. They go to school and kidnap as many people as they can. Yet, they will negotiate and bring them back. And government will say they don't pay ransom. Are they signals? Are they telling us truth? So the issue here is that government should sit up and do the needful. This attention on 2027 should stop. Let them drop it. I continue to say it in your program. It is those who are alive that will vote on 2027.
Yes.
If nobody is in disarray, who will come to vote? Nobody will come to vote. So it is advisable that government tackle this security as big as possible. It's spreading. As the test goes down, things continue to spread. I don't know who will be the next victim to follow. Let us know that this thing is already in our doorstep and do our best to tackle it. Why we support government? Why we mobilize our youth to enroll in police? Let our government do the needful, change the law so that the people, the police can have those police can have access to our weapons. It's about weapons. If you have been following the trend in the north, you discover that at times some area, when they attack some area, when those people prefer to come back for revenge, government they will send on those people that people are killed. And these are the kind of things you see complicity on the side of government, because it is motivated by religious religious motive. That's why it's spreading that way. Otherwise, why would somebody in authority, I mean, at the state of institution that protects us and property, be complicit in this kind of thing, knowing fully well that these are the people you are primarily meant to protect, and they allow those so-called militia or jihadists to continue to kill people. We turn blue eyes on them. It's not good. It's not doing this country very good. No matter however we want an investor to come and invest, that investor will know the level of stability in your country before you want it. Except those criminals that always benefit from such war-torn areas that will go and mine and take those things that are very common on this area when pumped as chaos. No investor would like to invest in such a country where there's a trouble.
Yes, you're right. All right. Because of time, let's thank you so much. All right. You've been listening to High Voltage on Volt 104.3 FM, your weekday news analysis show, where we review and analyze the news. You can join us again on Monday for more of this news, more of the analysis, and more of your voices. My name is Odeline. Have a beautiful weekend.